What's up, everybody? It's Alex from Heavy New York, and on the phone we got Clint Lowery from Seven Dust, Hello Demons Meet Skeletons, Stark New Day, Call Me No One. Am I missing anything?
That's pretty much it.
But
That's a lot. That's a long list.
yeah, right? Pretty damn impressive. But it's so awesome to have you here, man. I mean, people don't know this now, but when this interview airs, people will know. But you're going to be surprising releasing Grief and Distance, this new acoustic EP. Were these tracks actually maybe leftovers from God Bless the Renegades, and you were kind of just adjusting it and editing it, or was these brand new songs that were never done before?
These were completely brand new. Kind of born out of the grieving process of losing my mother, the pandemic, the whole thing, and I really wanted to write something to kind of use it as a therapeutic kind of escape. And so yeah, these are all fresh songs that outside of the two that are redos of God Bless the Renegades, there's a couple of acoustic versions of songs off of that record. So three of the five are brand new.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that these are very personal tracks, resulting to your loss and to the pandemic. Did obviously when a situation comes like pain and grief and suffering influences the music at all? So is this going to be maybe sonically a little bit different than what we've heard on God Bless the Renegades?
Yeah, I mean it's a lot different sonically. First and foremost, I went with pretty much an electronic inspired background, so there's not really a lot of rock elements to it. It's a lot of programming. I actually hired on Brian from 10 Years that I really like his brand of programming and no choices and stuff. So I actually pulled him in. I had the acoustic pieces of music, but I sent that to him, and he dressed it up with a lot of electronical elements. And so it automatically, because of the restrictions and some of the limitations I had in terms of recording, it's more of an electronic kind of release, just to give it a different tone. I wanted something different than God Bless the Renegades, for sure.
Was that kind of like a preconceived idea, or did it kind of just happen that way?
It was. I knew what I wanted to do right when I was kind of brainstorming and spitballing with my manager and the label, and I was like, I really want to spend this time doing something productive. And then we just started throwing out that idea, and I reached out to Brian right away and asked if he was interested in doing it, just to kind of keep ourselves busy, and I really needed the escape. So, it just kind of happened, but the initial idea was I really love electronic music. I love those different sounds and synths and things that I really can't utilize a lot with Seven Dust or even my solo project. I didn't do it as much as I wanted to. So this was just an opportunity to kind of have fun and try to do my version of Nine Inch Nails,
Yeah, that's interesting, because, electronic music is so, broad now to say. Is it electronic music like Ministry or Nine Inch Nails?
Totally,
or are you looking at maybe, Aphex Twin or Square Pusher or anything like that? What were some inspirations, actually, in terms of sonically for this?
Sonically, I knew the core of the songs were going to be acoustic and vocal, but and everyone that knows me knows that Trent Reznor is my hero, and I take a lot from him. There's a few other things. There's this band Sleep Token that's doing some cool stuff, and I was kind of inspired. Yeah, I really love just the whole vibe of what there's this angst and sadness to what they do, but then there's these beautiful melody lines. So that was as far as a new artist, that's kind of what inspired me to do this. But Nine Inch Nails, as always, I mean that's pretty obvious in everything that I do. At some point, there's a little bit of his inflection in my music.
Yeah, and I definitely see that a lot within your riffing style as well. I don't know if maybe you were ever inspired by more industrial metal artists too, maybe Static X or Fear Factory or something like that. But especially with the heavy riffs that you incorporate in your more heavy material, like in Seven Dust, I definitely see a lot of that inspiration in there.
Yeah, I mean we all kind of grew up in the same realm, and kind of inspired by the same things. Mm-hmm. So there's going to be a natural common thread and all that.
When it comes to being such a prolific artist, between your solo work in Seven Dust and Dark New Day and Hello Demons and stuff, is there like a mind frame? Is like the creative process very different depending on the projects you're working with, or is there a different like method behind the madness, like a usual method behind the madness that applies to everything?
I mean, my writing process is similar in terms of how I do it and the stages, but there are these little different. There's a formula that kind of goes along with each one of them, and that changes too. But for the most part, when I go in to write a Seven Dust song, there's a thing. There's a percussive element that I automatically know that is going to go there, and it happens naturally. I don't really try to force it or anything. It's just something that happens. I mean, if anything, the Seven Dust writing style bleeds over into my solo stuff, or any other project you hear Seven Dust in it. Just because of Morgan, he's such an influential drummer. His style rubs off on me. So, but there is a basic process I go through when I'm writing. But I'll definitely admit, very intentional on trying to make things sound different. Trying to make things, the starting point can be different. Sometimes I'll start with drums first for a lot of Seven Dust stuff, whereas on other writing sessions or other projects, I'll try to write starting from the guitar or a keyboard or something different to just spark a different direction. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, the process is pretty similar with any and all of it.
In order to get like inspired to write, to get that creative energy flowing, do you almost kind of like need to put yourself in a certain place at a certain time? Like I know a lot of artists right now are utilizing this quarantine to a T to like write new material and stuff. Do you need to put yourself in a certain atmosphere in order to get inspired, or does inspiration sometimes just come out of the blue?
I mean, it's a little bit of both. I like to light the candles and turn the lights down, do all those basic things just to kind of keep me inspired. But for the most part, it's kind of annoying because it'll come at times where I really can't get to my gear. I can't get to my riding station because, I can be driving down the road or I can be raking leaves or whatever it is, and I'll have this idea. So it really comes in these odd times, and a place where I go to a lot of movies and film, and I get really inspired when I go watch a movie. For some reason about the score, the drama, the whatever it is, I just always like writing after I see a film for some reason.
Are you into like movie soundtracks at all too?
Oh, I'm a huge fan. If I could change jobs and completely become, score film for the rest of my career, I would love to do it. I have no idea where I would start, but I love the fact that the music has such an influential part of the movie and the emotion and everything. So I go to movies and pay a lot of attention to that.
Yeah.
To that part.
You listen to Hans Zimmer a lot?
Oh man, I download. I actually, when I work out, I listen to that, and it's hilarious because it's probably so odd and a little bit American Psycho, but I listen to soundtracks and that's it. Especially him, he's incredible. There's like the Williams, and then there's Trent that is obviously him and Atticus moving into that realm is perfect, and so I listen to all that stuff.
That's awesome. Have you ever listened to Two Steps from Hell? If you want to add that to your radar, that's a great movie score group.
Okay. Yeah. All right, I will. I'll download it right after this.
There you go. Yeah. They have a lot of They have more albums than Kiss at this point. So.
Two Steps from Hell.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. But like one thing I was curious about is when you look at the entirety of your catalog, from God Bless the Renegades, when you look at, like Dark New Days, like 12 Year Silence or something like that, and of course all the stuff with Seven Dust, is it almost kind of like a representation of who you are at that particular time? Is it almost kind of like a self-portrait in that regard?
Yeah, I would hope it would be. I can listen to certain things, like especially a Dark New Day record or any records in the past. I can tell just when I listen to it, I'm like, oh, I was listening to so-and-so a lot during that time. Or it's a little bit of a musical stamp, a time stamp of where I was at, what I was inspired by at the time. Just like anything, styles, trends, fashion, people kind of have a little bit of that stigma on them in life in every aspect. So musically, it kind of shows up the same way too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's always I can hear it. I don't know if other people can, but I can.
Well, I mean, if you were to play me 30 seconds of like a Seven Dust song, for example, I could tell that that's off of Seasons, or that's off of Cold Day Memory, that's off of Kill the Flaw, etc. So like, I definitely see that a lot, and not, and also with Dark New Day, when you look at 12 Year Silence, and I mean the acoustic sessions, which I think is one of my personal favorite acoustic albums as well. Like that was, you're really able to like tell like how they were feeling at that time and what your inspirations were.
Yeah, that was a magical little musical. Yeah, that was one of those bands and projects that I'm just so happy it happened. It was very inspirational at the time. A lot of the guys, every guy in the band at that time was really inspired and really wanted to do something, and it was good to be a part of that band, and and write with that different dynamic than the Seven Dust dynamic for a second.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know I'm asking this probably way too far in advance, being that God Bless the Renegades just came out this January and you're surprised releasing this new EP, but with the direction of that this EP took, could this maybe almost serve as like a trailer of maybe what the next full-length solo album is going to sound like?
It's definitely taught me a lot more about, when I did the first record, it was initially going to be a lot more like this EP that I'm getting ready to release, and it was going to be a lot more electronic, a lot more just to kind of really keep it away from the Seven Dust realm. And I made the decision with Elvis, the producer, to stay more in the rock world. And so I would say this is more of where I will probably end up going when I do another solo thing, just because I really love utilizing that the programming aspect of it. I'm really inspired by it, but at the same time, I'm a guitar player. That's what I'm known for. So, I think if anything, it'll be. I'd like to even go to different territory. I would like to try, not even sonically, but musically, try to shift it into another place that's a little, just keep people guessing, and then, giving myself an opportunity to grow as a writer.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta do something different.
Yeah, well, I feel like I know that some artists are not really a fan of this title or this label, but like I almost consider you to be like an experimental artist in a way, because you incorporate so many different elements in your solo work and Hello Demons and stuff like that. Like I remember when I first heard Hello Demons Meet Skeletons, I didn't even know it was you. I just listened to the album. I was like, wait a minute, this is the same Clint from Seven Dust. So
that's true. I've never heard it from that perspective. Usually people find it through the Seven Dust umbrella, and so it's cool. I always wondered what it's like for someone to find that first. Or not that you did, but or anyone just random people finding Hello Demons first and then discovering Seven Dust. How weird that would be. But yeah, that's cool. That's cool. I've never thought about it.
yeah, and with your solo work, I mean, like when I first heard God Bless the Renegades, I thought a song like Here was very different from a song like Alive, which is very different from a song like Allowed to Run. It's like fair to say that like they like all these songs represent like an emotional moment in a way, right?
Yeah, I mean every one of the songs are real life experiences. There's no fiction in anything that I do, or no mystics or anything. It's more just life as life happens to me. A lot of relationship, content, a lot of just observational things I see in the world, seeing people, seeing the little chinks in our armor as people, But yeah, I mean that's what I know, and that's what I write about. Sometimes I feel like it gets a little redundant, so that's another thing I like to try to push in the future is just lyrical content that is a little deeper, a little off the beaten path, more specific, So instead of being vague and just writing words that are general, I really want to focus in and I don't want to say get more poetic, but just really put a little more energy into what I'm actually saying.
Yeah. Well, do you find it harder? Because, sometimes you're working on a song for hours, sometimes for days, if you're Tool, sometimes for 13 years. Like, do you find it maybe like the longer you're working on something, the harder it is to kind of like maintain that emotional spark or capture that moment in a way?
It is. I mean, I have a couple songs that go on that take a long time to write. And then I generally get really kind of turned off. If the song's taking that long, I figure there's something about it that isn't natural or something I'm having to force. But then you got bands that really take a long time, and I have respect for them because they are really, they're throwing ideas in and out, just exchanging. They're really putting it in, and that kind of focus is incredible. Everyone does it different. I respect when people take a long time. I love when people can write a song in 10 minutes. It's all different. It's all song to song. You never know how the process is going to be.
And that led me into the most difficult question of the whole interview. How do you know when a song is done?
Man, I used to overthink that question all the time. One person told me, I forget who it was, and I used to agonize over songs being finished and what I thought were finished. And he's like, you know what? Put the song out, get it mixed, release it. If you don't like it, write another one. If you don't like the way that turned out, you don't think it was finished, write another one. Because some people can be analysis to paralysis, where they think about it so long that they spent days and days, and they're like, within those days, they sat thinking about this one song. They could have written 3 or 4 other ones equally as significant. So I don't like to hang around a song too long. If I hit a brick wall, I move on to something else.
Yeah, and that's what the beauty is. Like, do you know how many times like bands have re-released like the same song and just put the radio edit, the limited edition, the bonus track edition, the techno version? So that's the beauty of like Bsides, where you could just re-record the same song and add a whole new remix on it, right?
Yeah, and people do that. The technology allows you to do that. I love when people do that. I think that's another writing skill itself, mixing, remixing, taking the vocals and changing the chords underneath them to make a completely different vibe. I mean, you're right. That's a good avenue we all have as artists.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at some of the YouTube covers too, I mean, it's incredible what people can transcribe metal songs into nowadays.
Yeah. And the ones you don't think are going to turn out great, that turn out good, you see the title, you're like, how are they going to do this? And they do it and really surprise you. I think that's cool.
Yeah, somebody did an xylophone cover one time of an All That Remains song, and I was blown away by that. So
I gotta check that out, man.
Yeah. Now, when it comes to your guitar work, do you actually have a background in theory? Like, do you know like what scale you're working off of in chord progression, or did you not even really think about that in songwriting?
I completely play by ear. There's a few things I know about the theory, but very minimal. I know just enough to kind of maybe tell you what a certain chord is, but for the most part, it's all just ear from the way I feel. I think there's cool things about understanding theory you can incorporate, but I've been a creative artist my whole life and leaned on the way that things sounded as opposed to why they work or why they don't work,
Yeah, I'd imagine, too, it also depends on the gear you're using, too, right? That could also alter the way it sounds and plays as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, the gear is huge. I love, that's another thing that you can experiment with all day long, but you can get caught in that rabbit hole and end up not, progressing, because you can go down all types of different gear to use for everything,
Yeah, I'd only imagine like how much a song would sound different live if you play it on a solid state amp versus a tube amp or something like that. Like even just those minor differences.
Right. Oh yeah. I mean, now with Kemper and all the, digital. I mean, everything. There's so many different options. You can pull in all these different amps quick, and they sound incredible. And yeah, it's a rabbit hole. It's fun to go down if you have the time.
It definitely.
And the gear.
Definitely, especially when you work in gear for a day job like I do.
That's great. That's a cool job, man.
Yeah. And just I got a couple more questions for you. But like, are you intending with this new EP, being that it's very personal for you? Do you want the listener to try to see things from maybe your point of view in a way, or can the EP also be open to interpretation?
I always like to leave it open for interpretation. I do the song about my mother in particular, and the song Haunted and the song Distance. I really would like people to kind of at least have an idea where the spark inspiration came from. The song about my mom it's a dark song. Lyrically, it's about a very harsh relationship, but a loving relationship. So I like the people for these particular songs to know where I was coming from. And sometimes elaborating a little bit through an interview or something sheds a little light on it. So next time you listen to it, you're like, oh yeah, I get that. I know where he's coming from. I feel that way too. Maybe that's the goal.
Yeah. Of course. I mean, like, sometimes I feel like if an artist... I've had this discussion, actually, with a few artists before. They say sometimes saying something is open to interpretation is almost kind of like a cop-out in a way of not explaining the songs or really defending it. Like, if you have a meaning or a subject matter, I'd imagine you want people... You know, you obviously can't force people to interpret it in a certain way, but you wouldn't hesitate on explaining it if somebody asked you what it meant.
Yeah, exactly. And, it's always that thing where I don't want to ruin someone else's idea. If there's a certain song I listen to, I'm like, I really think this is about this, because this is me, this guy's or guy or this girl, they're telling my story. I love when people have that connection. I don't want to ruin it for anybody and say the song's about the moon when it's about the sun. So I want people to have their own definition of it.
Yeah, and can somebody else's interpretation of the music maybe influence, like, can that maybe alter the way you look at your own art as well?
Someone else's interpretation of my stuff?
Yeah, like, can that maybe, do you look at it maybe differently if somebody connects with it in a different way?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things that people said, they try to explain to me what they think the song is about, and I'm like, wow, that's a way cooler message than I was even trying to put through. Some people just they approach it from a different angle psychologically, and I'm giving myself too much credit, because there's artists that are amazing. They have amazing lyrics. They're poetic. They are at another level, and I feel like I'm good. I'm not great in that realm, so my words are pretty generally easy to get, and the interpretation is pretty. It doesn't go too deep, but I would like to kind of, like I said before, really go a little harder with that and just kind of take more time with that.
Yeah, well, I'd imagine, like, I thought with God Bless the Renegades, too, like, from analyzing the lyrics, it seems like they were both very literal, but also very metaphorical. I think you attack it from multiple angles.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly the goal, and that is you pretty much know that is where I come from, and I want both of those elements in there, and I feel like just the most sincere, genuine lyric is going to be the way that I would actually speak to someone, or the way that I would, instead of doing it in the Yoda, like, backwards sentences and clever little phrasing. I just like to speak. I like to sing it like I speak.
Yeah, some people would think, like, because the music is so direct, it's not deep enough because you didn't write, like, a whole parallelogram according to it. Like, oh, like, this is an external metaphor for this. Like, sometimes it's very direct, and that's what makes it so deep and so interactive as well, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, there's been times where someone will say a line, and it's like, why did I not say that? That was exactly to the point. Especially in a lot of hip-hop, there's a lot of actual literal. You don't have to think about what they mean. You know exactly what territory they're talking about. You know exactly the story that's unfolding through the lyrics, and that's a storyteller. There's a brand that is that too. The storytelling lyric. Not the vague, not the not the ambiguous. The very. This is what happened. This is how I felt. I like those too.
Yeah. Well, I'd imagine, like, with God Bless the Renegades, for example, like, you would kind of want a listener, if they were to listen to this album, like, could they approach it almost from any different angle, or could, like, can they listen to it on shuffle if they wanted to, or do you recommend somebody starts off with God Bless the Renegades and end with, like, Do We Fear God?
The sequence is a big deal. Put a lot of thought into that, just the way that I like the way a record flows. But I think it works in any sequence, really. I mean, that in itself, when you put a record together, it should be able to work in any sequence, in terms of, each song should have something very special about it. Each song should have a front runner element to it. I mean, I don't know, I say that should. It's art. It can be anything you want it to be. I think it's cool that sequence, but if they don't, I don't think it really would affect the quality of the record,
Of course. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Really enjoyed this discussion. Is there anything else that you would like to promote for this new EP? Like, obviously, thanks to a certain virus that I choose not to name. But like I'd imagine that once all this is over, we'll be seeing you on the road quite a bit. And anything you'd like to promote with Seven Dust or the other 40 projects you're involved with?
Oh man, no, I would love for people to take a listen to the EP. If it helps cure some boredom or whatever you're going through, or emotionally, or I hope that serves its purpose. Seven Dust record is on its way really soon. That's why I'm trying to get this EP out so we can make room for that, the mothership. And I'm very excited about the new Seven Dust record. It's going to be awesome. Can't wait to have it out. It's done. Should be out soon. Look for those details, and that's it, man.
Awesome. Well, Clint, thank you so much, everybody. We are here with Clint Lowery. Be sure to pick up God Bless the Renegades if you haven't already, and be sure to check out the new EP, Grief and Distance. We will see you next time on Heavy New York.